off and we'll get good to go. Okay. So I'm going to press that and let people in. Let's see how that goes. I don't have to share my screen this time, so it makes it a lot easier. We'll let them trickle in. It takes a second. There they are.
Two. There's at least two people going to be listening to us.
5,
6. It's coming.
We're outnumbered.
8, 9.
We will be outnumbered for sure.
We can take them.
Hello, everyone.
We've got the power.
Hello, everyone. And as everybody starts to trickle in, now that we are at time, I'm going to start the introduction. Hello, and welcome to the Rexy Pod panel. We're about to get started here. I am also your administrator, so if you're having any trouble, please let me know, and I'll do the best I can for you while also participating in the session. We're going to go for that 20 minutes and see what we can get to. If you have a question, please use the raise hand filter or function or type it in the chat. I will make sure that it's asked at the end. Keep your questions family friendly. We don't work for Zoom. We're doing the best we can, but we're happy that you are here. So with that said, I'm Bree of Pontifacts, and I am pleased to introduce Graham and Ali of RexFactor and Rob and Jamie of Totalus Rankium. Thank you for being here, guys.
That's all right.
Hello.
Hello.
It's great to be here.
Sorry, that must be such a letdown when you have British people on like this. It's like,
big
I'm
welcome.
so thrilled to be here.
I don't mind being here, I suppose.
This is fine.
Quite all right.
It's quite
It's
bearable.
not a problem. It's okay. I'll bring the Canadian enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So, in August of 2010, Graham and Ali launched RexFactor, a comedic history podcast ranking all of the kings and queens of England from Alfred the Great to Elizabeth II. And in the 12 years that has followed, not only has the show gone through its own evolution to cover Scottish monarchs and the consorts of English monarchs, but they have inspired an entire genre of podcasting based off their format that includes podcasts from all over the world in history, literature, and culture. Right now, the RexyPods community includes RexFactor, Totalus Rankium, Emperors of Rome and American Presidents, Saga Things, Pontifacts, Battle Royale, Tudoriferous, Spanish Arpada, Ranking 76, So You Think You Can Rule Persia, Tsar Power, Grim Reading, and has inspired segments on Come Back a Star, Partial Historians, and the Presidency's podcast.
Blimey.
That is a lot.
It is a lot.
Good.
So today we get to talk about all things Rexy, how one show inspired many, how many eras, places, niches, and moments in history have been included, and how all this has created a massive amount of wonderful crossing. So,
that's lovely.
Oh, well, this is actually a dream come true for me. So I mean, this is phenomenal. Man. So I'd like.
You know what, Ali? You look like you're on top of the world.
Well, you know what? I would be, but I'm constantly the niggling at the back of my mind. I've left my cup of tea upstairs. Right. Keep going, because this will be absolutely so much better with that. 2-2.
Perfect. Well, I will start, since the first question is for Graham and Ali. I'm going to start and ask you, Graham, when you were creating RexFactor, how did the format shape how you wanted to talk about history, or how did history shape the format?
Oh, that's a very philosophical question. Well, yeah, because I mean, when we were thinking of what to do, and we wanted the idea of ranking the monarchs. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess it's informed by the history, in the sense that we were thinking, well, what are the key features of a monarch? What makes a monarch great? What are the different things you need to think about? So in that sense, it's shaped by the history. But then I guess when you actually come to do it, it's a very particular angle that we're taking each time, which other historians, quote proper historians, wouldn't do. They would probably say that it's a very ridiculous and superficial thing to rank monarchs and score them and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it does make it different, the way that you look at them when you're reading a book and thinking, right, this could be good battliness, or oh, scandal, Ali's going to like this bit, here are the nuns. So yeah, it does change the way that you approach a topic when you've got that thing in your mind. I always find it difficult when we do special episodes and when it's not ranking a person. Suddenly then it's just, well, what on earth do I do? How am I going to structure this? What's the point if you can't score them? I don't know what to do.
And yet that format has crossed such an incredible genres of not just monarchs, but people of history, literature of history, movies. Like, this format has clearly worked for all sorts of things. So even though you go, I don't know what to do, it's incredible how flexible it's actually been.
Well, I think that's the benefit. I think having actually a set format and structure, and because it's biographical as well and rulers, so many things it can apply to. I mean, not even outside of like in next month at some point, Ali and I are appearing on a podcast about bees. And we're going to be ranking a queen bee or queen bees.
I
don't think we meant to bring the knowledge, I'm hoping, but
that's fantastic. So how did it feel when you were first approached about adapting your format or having an offshoot show? And how does it feel now that you have an entire genre of podcasting?
It's very strange, isn't it? Like the very first one, I don't think it's going anymore, because there was actually another American podcast based on Rex Factor.
What was that called?
I can't remember. They only did like 6 or something over about 2 years, and then they stopped. So I think at that point we didn't really think anything of it at all. And then silly Rob and Jamie came along, and then there was an actual kind of proper long-standing thing. And that seemed to, I don't know if it was that there was a lot of people all at the same time kind of thinking the same thing, or if it was like once Totalus Rankium started, got going and kept going, which I think is the crucial thing in any podcast, is once you start, you've got to just keep on going. It's very easy to stop after the first few. But yeah, I think once that happened, then it felt like there was this little flurry of other ones, like Saga Thing, obviously you with Pontifacts. And it feels like the last year, I don't know if it's the impact of COVID and people at home and spending more time with podcasts, it feels like suddenly it's just exploded and I've kind of lost track. So it's very useful to have a little list.
But I will point out, Saga Thing was before us.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And it really links to what you were just saying, because I was listening to you two in my commute every day, enjoying myself, listening to Mike Duggan's History of Rome, obviously, because that's the law. Yeah, is it like in the back of my head? I wasn't really consciously thinking about it, but it's like, it'd be really good if someone combined these two together. And it was when I heard that Saga Thing was going to do something based on the format, that's when it dropped. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I could. Maybe all I need is like someone willing to listen to me.
Yeah.
Well, and continuing on that cycle, that's actually very true for how we got started as well, because I remember listening to Rex Factor. You guys were my first podcast ever.
Oh, wow.
And I absolutely loved it, of course. And then Ali said Pope Idol, and I went, wow, yes, that's entirely up my alley with my Renaissance background. I so want to do that. And I kind of sat on it for a while. And then I heard Saga Thing, and I was like, oh, they're open to people using this inspiration. And then I heard Totalus Rankium, and I was like, oh yes, this is a great way. It shows how it can be slightly adapted for different leaders, because a pope is not technically a monarch, but listening to what they did, and also having them survive and having the podcast ongoing, and hearing that you guys were open to having us come from that place of inspiration, made me go, we really have to do this. And so
yeah, because I remember you'd like being in touch years and years before. It's like you're
it took a while.
Edward VI fan, weren't you?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah,
and it's very
I
strange when you have that, because like Rob, had you been in touch before about like artwork and stuff before the podcast, or did that come?
No, that was before.
That's maybe why I kind of got an association with you from way back. So it's funny, like you guys have been kind of part of the community in a way years before actually.
I think that was my way of trying to creep in. So I'm going to make
emailed
contacts.
Rob about art for the same purpose.
Oh, really?
Well, because you've got your own little empire, don't you, Rob? You're sort of the Rexy artwork.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
we wanted to follow
Yeah.
suit. And Rob was wonderful to us. So it was
I must admit, when
definitely
I
the spring run.
pull up my podcast app, I can scroll down and just go, I did that artwork, I did that artwork, I did that artwork. It's quite nice.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So one more for Graham and Ali here. How have the fact that the Rexy pods exist, that we have our own sort of informal network, that we are this dynasty, how has that impacted your show and your approach to podcasting?
I'm not sure that it has, to be honest, because I think we're just sort of off doing our thing like everybody else is. So I mean, it's more stuff to listen to, I guess, from a personal perspective. But yeah, from a podcast perspective, I don't know that it has really, because it's just nice. It's a nice thing. It's a nice sort of sense of a family and all these people that have the same interests and the approach. And it's nice you sort of see when you get involved in different things, like you've sort of done live things like Totalus, Rankium, you've done sort of live stuff that we came to, when you sort of see some of the same names popping up in different people's social media and stuff. Think, oh, this is sweet. They're all kind of interconnected. And then the fact that you've got listeners that come to you from different podcasts, and they all end up, once they find one, they then check out all the other ones. So I think it's probably that. I think it's more from a sort of community basis that it's made a difference and it's felt like a bigger thing. I guess the podcast itself, it's always just me and Ali sit down and start chatting like we've always done. And I don't think anything has really happened to change that too much, but it's more that community, I think, is what's made it feel a bit different.
Yeah, but it goes back to when you need that one other, that first person to start, and Saga thing and all of these early ones would you need one other to create the community. And as you were saying earlier, as soon as we did that and they saw that it worked, it just makes sense to be for more people to join in, because you've got a ready pool of people who clearly like the same thing. Let's all have a big internet history feast, please.
So when we design the RexyPod website, it'll just say "Big Internet History Feast," please.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, yeah.
That's not the official tagline.
So for Rob and Jamie, as one of the first adopters of the Rex Factor format, what made this style of podcasting appealing to you guys?
Love.
Yeah, that's what it was. I
understand.
I don't know. We actually tried something before Totalus Rankium, because I didn't want to just wholesale lift the Rex Factor format. I thought that was a bit cheeky. So we tried something and it just didn't work. We were ranking top 5 things per episode throughout history. So an episode would be like top 5 Roman emperors.
Yeah.
We actually recorded that one, never released it. And then top 5, I don't know, ships, top
5 dictators.
Yeah, stuff like that.
That sounds
we
brilliant.
soon realized, I mean, it as a concept on paper in a pub, we were loving it. In reality,
after 5 pints, it sounds brilliant.
In reality, it just didn't work. Too much research, it just didn't work. It fell apart. But I really wanted to give podcasting a go, because like Graham and Ali, you two seem to enjoy it so much, and I was very interested in Roman history at the time. Well, still am, obviously.
Years of overstudy has just killed any joy.
I got bored a long time ago. When that first effort fell apart, where we realised it was unworkable, it was a case of, you know what, I'm just going to contact Graham and Ali and just say, do you mind if I steal your format? Because I want to do something like this. And you guys said yes. And
well, I think we gave one caveat. It was just, we gave one caveat that said, give us a shout out though, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I think I was like, right, that was proper business we just did there, chaps.
Yeah, there you go.
That's as official as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You know what? If you're listening to this, I suggest you listen to our X Factor. There you go. There's your shout out.
Thank you.
It's gone full circle.
Great bunch of lads.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, Jamie, from your perspective, I mean, it was a case of me turning up at your house and talking history at you, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. My involvement was Rob coming to me and saying, "Do you want to do something?" It's like, "Yeah, right."
Yeah.
That was it. Really. That's my involvement.
So you two have two RexyPod shows. You are doing Roman emperors and presidents, which are both wildly different subject matter and yet a lot of overlap. So is this encouraged by the way the show runs? And does it prove the Rexy format against the tests of time? How did you have to adapt it?
I think what it shows is that the format of ranking leaders in a somewhat frivolous, light-hearted way works whenever. However, depending what period you're covering, will hugely change the feel of the show. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with something relatively recent as slavery, that becomes very tricky. Compared to slavery in Roman times, which is so far away.
Fine.
Yeah,
You can make jokes about that. It's fine. Yeah. American history is interesting.
And it's been quite a turbulent present as well to be doing American President's podcast and then the last sort of decade.
Yeah. And there is a lot of amazing stuff that has come out of the United States. I mean, let's face it, there is a good reason why the United States was so proud when they first started, because that was amazing. The revolution, no, we're going to be a democracy. We're going to look at the best of the ancient world. We're going to romanticize it and see if it was in real life. And it did for all of 2 weeks. And it's just become like a real world country since, with all the problems. These are problems that definitely were there in the Roman times, but we can it's the old adage of humor is tragedy plus time. It's you can look at Roman history and find the funny things much easier than you can look at American history, just because it's more recent. I don't know if you found this, Ali, when you were doing the English monarchs in your first season, and obviously all the monarchs since. But obviously you suddenly hit that we're in present times now.
Yeah,
and
I had
things
that.
Things become a bit more serious and a little less frivolous.
What was it? There was one really recently that there was some. You see those little time bridges of people but she can't be around. This is Tudor times, and you need to completely adjust your focus. Very funny.
It's like we get every now and again we get messages for this series, people asking us if we're going to do Diana, which we won't, because we're going up to Prince Philip, and obviously Diana never got to be the consort. But even so, it just feels too recent. I mean, technically we did the Queen, but that does go back 70 years, obviously. But yeah, it does feel weird actually.
That's kind of where you do have one advantage over us, is that we have, haven't we? So, I should know this stuff. We have now hit Queen Elizabeth's reign in our American series. We've still got 9 episodes, 18 episodes to go, because we are going to slowly go through the modern times, and it's very different. Whereas our Roman series, we can just do all sorts. Like today, we just talked about elephants going over the Alps and all the fun that happened there. Which is a lot more fun.
And 20,000 people died, but that's okay because
I literally was reporting like literally tens of thousands of deaths, but at the same time making jokes about elephants. Jamie even had an elephant hat, but he didn't get it in time. He was going to wear.
Pointing.
That's the tragedy.
There we go.
He does have it now, though.
Oh, there we go. That's begging to be put.
I think you need to go and get it.
Reveal. Oh, he doesn't need to go far.
Should we be asking you any questions?
Yeah.
if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to. We're coming up on our 20 minutes, so we have about like 10 more that we can throw stuff at. This one I will address as well, because this is something we're really going to have to contend with is the modernity of the history, because the papacy exists in essentially an unbroken line from the time we are covering now until the modern day. And I'm far more comfortable covering popes of the 4th century murdering people than I will be dealing with Pius XII onwards to Francis. And it will be quite an experience to have to consider. Already we are trying to plan how we will adapt the format to keep it lighthearted and fun, but still address those things that we need to be very critical of the modern Catholic Church. So it is an interesting place to be. Did you have any questions before I give us a sort of general one to discuss?
I was wondering whether you. Oh, sorry. We both.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
Eager with our questions.
Loads of questions. You got one lined up.
I was just wondering how hesitant, if at all, you were about doing ranking in a religious subject area, because obviously for monarchs it doesn't tend to be such a controversial area in terms of the historical characters, but obviously saying anything about ranking infallible popes, presumably some people won't like that in a way that wouldn't affect us. I was wondering how that affected you in your sort of starting and then as you've gone along.
Well, it's definitely something we had to consider because, as you say, it's very sensitive for some people, because these are figures of particular importance to their understanding of who they are and how they connect with the world. And so we were quite prepared to deal with that level of controversy and sort of expected it. It's interesting how little of that we've gotten, but we're still so early in the church. So I assume that as we get post-Crusade, closer to the Protestant Reformation and whatnot, that will definitely play in. But what I think that the format has done for us in particular, and why I'm so interested in popes myself, is that popes are historical figures. I'm not as interested in what they said about religion itself or the Bible itself. I'm interested in the impact that they have as a historical figure and how they leveraged those beliefs to impact monarchs and countries and wars and entire countries and colonialism and all of these massive things that have shaped our world. So we've always come at it as popes from a perspective of a force of history, and sort of accepted that controversy may come, but we've been very careful in the way that we structure the show, that we're not judging the actual religion itself or the beliefs itself. And that took a lot of time and effort to really consider how to do it and make it fun.
It
Rob,
takes a long time to get the factors right, though. And so it really, because the scoring early on for us was all over the place because we hadn't got to the very end. And, it's difficult to judge, for example, battliness when you then don't have anyone going into battle. So I think it does evolve. And one of the pressures on that is how more modern the history is.
For sure.
It's when it slowly dawns on you that you're locked into these categories and they won't necessarily keep making sense. As I went back and forward so long on the American series on whether to give negative or positive points for essentially the scandal round. I'm so glad I finally landed on giving negative points, because it's just bad stuff there.
Well, and it helped that you started that way with the president, so that you're not changing midway, which was something we had to contend with.
I wanted to get it right at the start. I did make the right call, I think, in the end. But yes, no, I was definitely debating that for a long time. About what? So my question, Brie. I'm tempted to give you a really serious question about the Catholic Church, just so you have to answer it whilst watching Jamie in an elephant hat.
In an elephant hat.
I was like, does he become so uncomfortable he takes it off because you're giving a really serious answer, or do you just crack under the? I don't know, but I'm not going to do that. Obviously you were listening to lots of podcasts. You were So I first knew of you as a fan of our podcast before you started the podcast. When was it that you went, you know what, I'm going to do this?
So by the time you started, I was already considering it. And funnily enough, Fry was the biggest pusher, right? She was like, we've got to do this. So the minute that I told her that Totalus Rankium existed, she's like, look, it will work. Let's do this. Let's do this. So we had already sort of landed on the idea about, I would say, 1.5 years, 2 years before we actually got started in it. Part of that was my commitment to a previous podcast that I was working on and making sure that we could make everything work. So we had a very slow development. But yeah, by the time I heard Claudius and wanted to yell about how much I love Claudius at you, then I knew I had to do it.
He's a mediocre emperor at best.
You know, we have had so many debates about this already. But it's in the same fashion that as Graham remembers me as the fan of Edward VI, when I wanted to give all the feedback about that episode, which was all positive. You guys did an excellent job, considering that most people write him off entirely, and I will fight them. But that was when I knew, if I have this much enthusiasm that I really want to talk to somebody about something like this, especially something that ties into my own historical background of the Renaissance and the Medici family and whatnot, I've really got to put that energy into something. So it really cemented the podcast for me.
I think that, it goes back to your first question about the angle, where it's unusual to try and get a definite answer on something that's quite subjective, and we, so that you can play a game with them. And that's where Rex Factor spawned from, where it's with Graham getting annoyed with me just saying, no, well, come on, which one's better at war? You know what I mean? So that sort of thing. Just trying to get it, tell me what the answer is. So to have the fact that there's all these people doing this about different subjects that you wouldn't necessarily be interested in, you can get actual answers to these preset questions. It's brilliant.
So what you're saying, Ali, is that all these podcasts exist because you want the world to be just boiled down to a binary viewpoint.
Exactly, which is most unlike me, actually. It's far too chaotic to see it well like that. But it's nice that's why we have Graham, who can actually organise world into
scattered thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the dynamic as well, is that you can come to it and be the person who is the organized one and who will set and be excited about telling the story, or you can be the one who wants to hear the story and wants to make the judgments. And it's a beautiful dynamic that works really well, especially when you have the chemistry of friendship as sort of that underlying.
And that was something which wasn't planned. For obviously, I guess everybody else had us as an example. It's like a one person researches, the other one reacts.
Yeah,
but like our very first
worked so well.
But our first episode, we just started, and I started chatting, and about 5 minutes in, I was like, "Oh, you've really done some research." And I was like, "Well, how is this going to work otherwise?" And I think Ali's view generally was we turn up each week and just say whether we knew anything about whoever was the next monarch, and thus presumably quite a few 2-minute episodes would have ensued.
It is scary how similar it was with us.
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting that we all have the same dynamics in our friendship.
Yeah. Because we really did. The one thing I wanted to make sure our podcast was different to yours, because I was still clinging on to this idea that we weren't just going to wholesale just take Rex Factor and plonk it in the Romans, which we did in the end. It was we were going to both do the research.
Yeah. And we did for the first episode.
No, first 10 minutes.
First 10 minutes.
Jamie didn't tell me that he'd only researched the first 10 minutes worth. And just went, I don't know anything else. But
you carried it. So
I carried it, and it worked much better.
It did.
Yeah.
It's much better that way.
I think I saved our podcast by doing
you did. I'm forever in you're wearing an elephant hat.
Kiss the trunk.
And on that note of you're wearing an elephant hat, we're going to open the floor if there are any questions. So if you guys have any questions for us, you can either use the raise hand feature, or you can type it in chat and I will start asking them. I see that there is one already, which is, when is Jamie ranking Star Trek?
So we've already got a plan for that. For our 4th week episodes. I've already mapped it out. We're going to rank the captains of the main captains of Star Trek. And I'll maybe delivering it as well.
He's been saying this for about, how long have we been doing the podcast? 6 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been saying
I've
this.
also-
now.
I've also volunteered my husband to Rob to do this with you because he's a massive trekker. So, if you need somebody to talk to who might understand some of it,
That's
I've got
a great
you.
idea.
Yeah.
Guys, I just hate to point, I am actually in space here.
Yeah, you can be involved as well. That's
You're on
great.
first
Yes.
episode. It's fine.
Yeah.
There was also a
Captain
question from Gentry Hannah saying, how long before there is a Rexy pod ranking the other Rexy pods?
Oh,
I don't know.
meta.
I feel like that's going to start a war.
That would start a war.
We would all end up fighting each other.
One that we would win because we've got
Yeah.
elephants. Yeah.
So Sarah asks, do you ever yearn to swap roles?
No.
No.
No,
No.
We did sort of once in a special episode.
I
We
know.
did one special episode on Ali's, which someone requested, on Ali's dissertation on
Oh yes, I'm.
the Castles of Edward I, which was Ali's Middle Eastern Studies dissertation, which he managed to be about Edward's Welsh castles. And it was quite a few months later than we planned, because it took quite a few months longer than planned for Ali to read his own thing.
I to be honest, I don't think I did. I think I got
No.
bored of giving you excuses that I had, and I just remember it just a bit having to take my shoes and socks off because I have never had such sweaty feet. When I didn't enjoy the experience at all. Anything that makes your feet cry, you've got to take a look at yourself and say it's not for me.
So
Wise
Marco
words.
asks, which country or history would you like to see covered as a Rexipod that doesn't already exist?
South America. Something in South America would be quite cool.
I mean, Egypt is an obvious one, as in
Mhm.
everyone knows about it, but I don't
yeah.
think anyone would ever be able to do it because we just don't know enough about it.
Chinese emperors is another vast
Yes,
one, but equally.
because I mean, Chinese history is just as detailed and interesting as European history, but unless you know how to read the language, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
It's very hard to access. So
But
yeah, that would be very good.
That makes it so much more mysterious, though, doesn't it?
Mm.
There's this whole other layer to it that you can explore, and all the cultural differences that will bring with it. I reckon I'd like to do Russia.
That's coming.
Yes, it's coming.
Czar power
Otherwise, I
is
would have said
coming.
that. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Which is
well,
a
that's
relief
one.
because that was like an option for Series 3 for us. Because obviously,
Funnily
it's
enough.
seen as the Third Roman Empire. It's like, okay, I don't need to consider that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Actually, Fry had recommended that as well, and I gave her a hard no on that one. That's not for me. But I would love to see the Incan emperors of Peru done. Mainly, I clearly have a penchant for them. I've named my dog Pachacuti. I'd love to hear
yes.
that covered. I think that'd be really
Another one I'd like to, but I don't know if there's a way of, if there's a strand that runs through them all, but biblical or Old Testament kings. and all those sort of things. Have you got?
Bonus series.
So Graham,
Well-
what are you thinking, Capon?
I mean, there is also the Kings of Rome, which needs to be done at some
Oh,
point.
yes, yeah.
But there's
Oh, yeah.
only 7 of them, so that would have to be like a really short, sharp mini-series. Of,
AKA the Roman Saxons.
Oh.
I think I
So,
saw someone with a hand up.
do we have a hand? I don't
It
see a
might have gone
hand
down
up.
now.
Oh, no, I see a hand up for Cameron. So Cameron, I'm going to let you talk and you can ask your question.
Ooh.
You can
Okay.
unmute.
You
Hello?
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Hi, Cameron.
I thought it was kind of interesting that, with Pontifacts and Rex Factor, you guys got to get your feet wet with a bunch of kings and popes had very little sources. So you can kind of get your, but with Totalus Rankium, you guys had to start right away with the most sourced period. And so you couldn't sort of kind of dip your toes in with sort of the unsourced area. I wonder if that was hard because to deal with, or was that an advantage?
Yes and no. It was in some ways a blessing because I think my word count in my notes for Augustus is one of my shortest, which is just insane. If I was told now that I'm doing an episode on Augustus, I don't know how I'd put it together because I just struggled to fit it all in. But for some reason, it's my first episode, so I just kind of went for it. I have tried to, and so far, 160 episodes we're on?
Right.
I've managed to fit every empire into one episode, which is something I just like consistency. So I've managed to do it. But I don't think if Augustus arrived halfway through, I wouldn't have been able to do it. In the same way, Graham, you made a decision with Henry VIII to break the format and go, no, we're going multiple episodes, which was definitely right at that point because you needed to fit that in.
So even then with Henry, like again, I certainly like the amount of research I do now compared to the English series. I think, God, it would be so hard. I kind of like to do it, but it'd be so hard. But even Henry VIII, we actually reviewed him in one episode. We just did a kind of supplementary.
Yeah.
What happened to him? I think
that was
George...
so fun.
Oh no, it was a good one. I think George III maybe was the first one we actually did a biography and review, and then Victoria just kind of broke me and certainly broke Ali.
Oh gosh.
Best part of the year to do that.
But it meant we got to hear Graham's Victoria voice, which is one of the best things in podcasting history.
That is also sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, it just mean that it was really fun to record that Henry's extra bits, whatever it was called, because it was the first one we did out and about, and we found a little like broom cupboard type thing.
Oh, you booked a room at work, yeah.
Yeah, but it was so small, our knees were touching. And we were recording what happened to Henry VIII. It was an intimate recording session.
So funny story about the many hours of Victoria. I got stuck in a traffic jam when I was listening to the first one, and a milk truck flipped over on the highway. So I listened to most of that entire thing stuck in the exact same part. So every time I pass that highway sign, I can hear Graham's Victoria voice in my head. So Christoph Goebel asks, for each of you, which rankings got the most opposing feedback? Rex Factor seems pretty clear with Edgar the Peaceable. For Totalus Rankium, he felt that Truman was treated unfairly. So where did you get the pushback?
I mean, those from our podcast. I mean, we criticized him for dropping atomic bombs on civilians.
Yeah. That's the biggie, isn't it?
That got a bit of pushback. That's definitely the most pushback we've got, which, I mean, I was always very aware during the American one, the more recent we get, the more emotions will be stirred.
Particularly that, which is like literally a textbook, like ethics question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
He went hard one way.
Yeah, it is essentially, we did a podcast about someone's life who then had the trolley problem at the end of it, and then we decided, right, well, we have to judge him. Okay, it's this. And I personally stand by our decision, but I fully understand why people disagree, because it's a very hard thing to get your head around. But yeah, so that was definitely our toughest one. Whereas Edgar the Peaceable, I feel, was slightly more light-hearted. Pushback.
Also, like the closer we get to history, the less for us, the less and less responsibility the monarch seems to take. So it's easier. But it's always been Edgar. I don't think we've ever. Oh well, Henry, maybe Henry.
I've had some kickback, like this series, the consorts, because you've said yes quite a lot of the time. So when I've said no, there've been a few that I've got some angry responses. I don't think it will last in the way that Edgar has lasted, but we have had a few. The thing with Edgar was that it was really early on as well. So it was before we had many people listening. It was before we had a real sense of, even that we'd finished the whole series. So for Ali, really, it was still at the stage of, well, I've not really heard of them, so it can't be that good.
I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea why Edgar didn't get it anymore. Absolutely no idea. And I think probably at the time it was a point of principle, me exercising some power.
Okay,
but it's a hell.
And I did also, I didn't push it because I thought I don't want this to be, because it was my initial thing to start. I don't want it to be that it's whatever I say goes. So I thought I should probably just leave this one. I didn't leave it in this will get Ali for the next 12 years. But so it proved.
We've had two that were somewhat controversial. I think the number one that people were less pleased with was that Fry denied Zachary a papal bull. He was quite a substantial pope in the 7th and 8th century. But the bigger one, I think, is we just covered Nicholas. And Nicholas is the only other pope besides Leo and Gregory who often gets called the Great. And by the time we finished his, and he really should have been a great, in my opinion. And by the time I had finished covering him with Fry was unwilling to call him the Great and only the Deluxe. And I get a lot of messages about how that was unfair to Nicholas, who should definitely be on par with Leo and Gregory. So like Allie, she's taking the brunt of this one because I fought for it, but she wasn't having it. So that brings us right up to time. So I see that there are more questions. If anybody wants to continue the conversation, the break room will exist. I don't know where you guys are off to next, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining us at this session.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Two hats.
Two hats.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.